Hello and welcome to Gamers Watch Behind the Screens. My name is Harry, and this is a new series that we've started. And I am, well, quite honoured to say that our first episode, we're joined by someone who I have a lot of admiration for. I'm here with Grant. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me.
Good, good. If people don't know your work, how can they find you, and what is the sort of stuff that you do?
Uh, I am a journalist focusing on accessibility and the disabled perspective in video games. Um, I like to give a voice to disabled people to not be viewed as inspirations, but rather be viewed as people who are struggling to enjoy a medium just like everyone else, or people who enjoy mediums because they allow them to socialize when the world is built primarily for able-bodied people. Um, you can find my work throughout the video game industry in publications like IGN, Washington Post, um, fanbyte.com, Can I Play That, which is the premier accessibility publication in the gaming industry. Um, you can also find me on Twitter at SuperCrypt1994.
Lovely. So, if you don't already follow Grant, I would absolutely recommend it. He is one of my favourite people, not just for the work that he does, but because we share quite common opinions on Pokemon that we've already spoken about about 5 minutes ago, and I'm sure we'll talk about that shortly. So, before we talk about sort of your work within accessibility and your journalism work, I'd love to know where your love of gaming started and what some of your first memories of video games. And I can probably guess.
So I actually began gaming on a Super Nintendo. My first memory was in my parents' bedroom, hooked up to those mini TVs,
Yeah,
like the 17-inch like cube TVs, um, playing Super Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Turtles in Time. And I vividly remember arguing with my grandmother that Michelangelo was yellow, not orange, because yellow is my favorite color. Um, and it just grew from there. I've played on just about every Nintendo system. Actually, every Nintendo system. Um, it branched from Super Nintendo to Game Boy, where I was introduced to Pokemon, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
yeah, we will.
Um, to all the way up to now to the Switch. And then as gaming evolved, I went with it. I went with PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, PC, the new Xbox, which is currently right next to me. Um, it's been such an integral aspect of my life that I truly don't remember a time where I haven't been gaming and playing games with friends and family.
I would say that's the same for for me especially. I mean, my first memory is I was 5 years old playing Croc on a PlayStation One in a hotel down in the southwest of England, and I remember burning the image of the health bar from Tekken 2 into my old CRT monitor because I used to just play it so much. Now, you did touch on it. We have to talk about Pokemon because I saw you put a tweet out the other day, and it's quite a contentious one because everybody has their rose tinted glasses for the third generation of Pokemon.
They
But
do.
I'm like you, it's overrated. It's not that good.
It's I view Gen 3 Pokemon as the generation that everyone got into Pokemon.
Yeah.
So people are gonna view it as like the best, but there's so many flaws with it. Um, I'm not a big fan of the map. I'm not a big fan of the Pokemon themselves in Gen 3. I just think Gen 2 is the best. I think it still is the best.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't really hold up well today,
No, we
but
just
I
spoke about
just
that before.
yeah.
It's a tough game. The For me, the legendaries, how they worked those out with them randomly spawning around the map. that does not age well whatsoever. And the lack of a run button as well really is quite difficult to forego. But that we spoke about it just before we started recording. One of my earliest memories in gaming is walking across that the waterfalls into the first generation of Pokemon, and I remember playing it and it changing from daytime to nighttime while it was changing daytime to nighttime to me. And I honestly thought it was magic. There was no other way to explain it. The game knew what time it was, and that absolutely blew my mind. But yeah, Gen 2 is my favorite. I started in Gen 1, but Gen 2 is still my favorite. Did you start in Gen 1 yourself?
Yes, my brother gave me, when he came home from school, he had a pack of playing cards. And I was 3 years old at the time, and my mom was like, well, just give him a card. And he gave me a Machop. And it's the first card I ever received, and it really solidified this strange being, and I wanted to catch them all. And
Yeah.
then a few years later, I got my first Game Boy, and then Pokemon Blue, and that's just where it all began.
So have you played? Well, I say every Pokemon game. There's going to be a lot of Pokemon games that both of us haven't played. So have you played all the mainline Pokemon story games up to Arceus that's just come out?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have not played the Let's Go series.
Okay. So
Um,
I quite enjoyed the Let's Go series, mainly because it had been a long time since I played a Pokemon game. I missed out quite a few games that I've since gone back to. Um, and there is the nostalgia aspect. It's why I loved Pokemon Go so much. It wasn't very good. It was just that nostalgia of seeing those Pokemon from when I was sort of 5 or 6 years old. Um, but what did you think of the latest Pokemon game, Arceus Legends?
it's the game I've wanted for 20 years as
Yeah,
a fan of Pokemon. It's the game that, like, I've always envisioned of walking into a world, seeing the Pokemon move, seeing them interact with nature, seeing them interact with the trainer yourself. The fact that they attack you,
yeah,
or run away from you, or act like actual creatures.
like a
It,
living world.
yes, it's something I've wanted for, like I said, 20 years. So to me, it's not perfect. Um, there are a lot of issues in terms of like pacing and content,
Yeah,
but Arceus is a fantastic like groundwork for what Pokemon can become in the future.
yeah. I think the way that it was explained to me by a friend of mine, Tom, who is also a big Pokemon player. He streams Nuzlocke on Twitch quite a lot. The way that he explained it to me is this is the toe being dipped into the water of the future of every Pokemon game. So everyone's asked for it for years. Everyone has wanted a fully open world Pokemon game where you see them running around. Then Breath of the Wild came out, and everyone wanted Pokemon, but in Breath of the Wild. And this is their sort of let's see if it works. For me, the reason that Pokemon Snap, the original and the new one, are two of my favorite Pokemon games is exactly as you said. It's watching those Pokemon interact with each other that sort of like when the N64 game came out and I could see some Charmanders playing together in my mind, that's what I viewed Pokemon doing. And so it's why I love Pokemon Snap so much, especially the new one, because the depths that they go into in that new game are so good. Um, so yeah, Legends I think is the start of what every Pokemon game will be. It's that next obvious revision that maybe should have been done 10 years ago, but it's that next revision. And I don't think there will be a closed world mainline Pokemon game anymore. As much as I enjoyed Sword and Shield, it was very much walk here, talk to this person, walk there, talk to this person. And they tried the open world areas, but didn't really expand on it enough. So for me, that's the future of Pokemon. And I'm really glad you enjoyed it because everyone I've spoken to who is a Pokemon fan has said it's the game I've always wanted. So it's good to hear that you did as well.
Yeah, I still haven't beaten it yet because Elden Ring is a cruel mistress and she demands my time. Um, but yeah, I'm very pleased at Arceus. It's truly like one of the Pokemon Company's better games
Yeah,
they've released in the past, I would say, 10 years. And this is coming from a fan who literally buys every single game, even the like double copies, like Sword and Shield. I have them both. I have no reason to have them both, but I have them both.
of course you do.
Like
Why would you not?
Yeah, Diamond and Pearl. Again, no reason. The internet exists. If I need to trade a Pokemon or want something from a friend, I could just do it, but I have them both.
Yeah, I mean, I think we take for granted just quite how powerful a phone device is these days because we're so used to it. But growing up, if you had said like there will be a way to trade Pokemon wirelessly around the world with anyone, I don't think we would have believed them. We would have carried on assuming that link cables were the only way you could do that. Yeah, Pokemon for me, huge inspiration growing up gaming. Pokemon Red was just I think I played it more than any other game in my entire life. I I played it on my best friend's original black and white Game Boy, and then got a Game Boy Color for Christmas, and did not stop playing it until I got Crystal. And I think I got Crystal 2 years after it came out, because 7-year-old Harry wasn't worried about release dates quite so much as I am now. So yeah, Pokemon, I could literally spend the rest of my life talking about it.
As you should.
Yeah, I mean, why would you not? What I haven't ever been able to get into, and people always find it weird, I've never been able to get into the trading cards. It's completely passed me by.
I recently, I think it was like 5 years ago, downloaded the online version,
Yeah.
like the official online game. I've been obsessed with it ever since. I used to collect them physically,
Yeah, I
but
mean, I
purely,
collected, but
yeah,
I never could play it. I don't know what it was. I was more of a
yeah,
Yu-Gi-Oh guy, I guess.
yeah. I mean that's fair too. I never played Yu-Gi-Oh until it became a game on Steam,
Yeah.
and that was like I think 4 years ago. That was my first time ever playing Yu-Gi-Oh. But yeah, I just everything, anything Pokemon. It's 100% me. I love it. It's great.
So for anyone watching this who wants to get Grant on their podcast or interview them, all you need to do is just tweet at him and say, "I like Pokemon. Do you want to talk about it for an hour?" And then he'll show up.
I'll just be there. It's like you look in the mirror and you say Pokemon 3 times,
Yeah,
and I just
yeah.
appear behind you like
You're the
Pokemon.
Bloody Mary of
Yeah,
Pokemon Twitter. I
yeah.
love that.
My
That's
new name.
incredible.
I love it.
Yeah, Bloody Grant. So, like I said, we could talk about Pokemon forever, but I think something that I really want to talk to you about is accessibility in gaming. We had a very quick chat just before we started rolling, and I'm having a bit of a fanboy moment because I love the work that you do. Some of the conversations you've had, I think, are not only really important but really powerful. And I'll go to the Elden Ring conversation that you had with Steve, which if anyone watching this hasn't seen that already, don't pause this and go and watch it. Like, watch this first, and then afterwards, put it in your queue and watch it afterwards. It's the video that made me want to start to explore accessibility. Uh, from my point of view, I'll tell you what I thought accessibility was 2 or 3 months ago. I thought accessibility was the Xbox adaptive controller, and I never really understood how that worked. I just saw it as this big keyboard, and I never really thought to look into it much more. And I thought that it was just making games easier. Like that was my foray into it. But what I've learned in a very short time is that almost every disability needs a different approach when it comes to video games. But that by putting that need to the forefront of development, it makes games more inclusive for everyone, which is never a bad thing. How can more people enjoying a game ever be bad? So I'm going to ask you a really simple question. What is accessibility in gaming for you?
I'm glad you said for me because accessibility is different for literally everyone. Even people with the same disability, it's different for them. My disability, spinal muscular atrophy type 2, is a neuromuscular disability and progressively weakens muscles over time. Um, I know people who live in my same area who have the disease who are stronger than me, weaker than me. It varies. So accessibility for me is, like you say, just allowing audiences to experience your games as effortlessly as possible. Not in the sense that you're removing the challenge,
Yeah.
because games are meant to be challenging. You're meant to feel a sense of accomplishment, a sense of reward. You're meant to beat bosses, discover items, explore new regions. But it's difficult to do that when the barriers in the game themselves are preventing you from doing that. And not barriers in the sense that, like, oh, this boss is hard, or oh, I need this item. It's called unintentional barriers. And I've learned this from interviewing devs throughout the years at Ubisoft, Xbox, Square Enix. Unintentional barriers are barriers that developers didn't mean to put in the game, but just a result of development there in the game, and they make the game immensely difficult for people to play. Um, like for example, does a game need quick time events? Or can you just have the same effect, the same end result, without slapping on a quick time event? Does it need a section where you have to sprint? Or again, can I do the same exact thing, just without sprinting? Those are the unintentional barriers that often prevent so many disabled people from playing games, or even finishing
Those are
games.
things I would never think of. A quick time event for me is something that I would not think twice about. More than anything, I just think they're annoying because I don't like quick time events. I would never see them, like you say, as an unintentional barrier because it's a barrier that I've never had to deal with. And that's I think that's something that more and more people need to understand is that everyone's experience is completely different. And the only thing that can improve by talking to people is that more people can play your game. So, have you got some sort of examples of where you've spoken to somebody and there's been that shift change that you've seen within game development?
Yeah, there's actually several. When I first joined Can I Play That in 2019, my first ever official review where a company gave me a review code that's like the thing that all reviewers strive, right? You know, get
Yeah.
review codes, was Gears 5. Microsoft reached out and they were like, hey, you want to do an accessibility review? I said, yeah, sure, like, great. There was an option where you couldn't toggle aiming. You had to hold it. And if
Okay.
you've ever played a Gears game, they're very intense with action.
Yeah.
Like, shooting sections are usually drawn out. There's a lot of enemies from different angles.
Yeah.
They expect you to be in those fights for at least 2 to 5 minutes at a time. But because I had to hold the aim button, it was just too exhausting, and
Yeah.
I would either just hip fire, which is fine, but you're not as accurate, or I would just use the chainsaw, which again is fine. However, enemies could easily kill you if you just run up to them and try and chainsaw their face. So I wrote the review. It was published. I think roughly 2 to 3 weeks later, one of the lead designers of Gears reached out to me publicly on Twitter. Was that, hey, we want you to re-review the game because we fixed your request. And I was like, what? And so I looked back in the game, and sure enough, there's an option to toggle aiming.
Yeah.
And the score improved as a result. Not majorly. It's not like I was, drastically changing my opinion. But it really showed me that, like, wow, like,
They were listening.
developers do care.
Yeah.
They want you to enjoy this. Also for Jedi Fallen Order, my review for gameplay that was the platforming was fine, but there were so many buttons that you needed that to be mandatory to do platforming.
Yeah.
Like, why does there need to be a button to drop? Why can't I just press down on the keyboard and it automatically does it? That doesn't, to me, it doesn't make sense. And roughly a month later, I believe, they patched it. And they added an option that lets you just seamlessly go up and down
Yeah.
obstacles without an extra key. That's just speaking on the topic of options.
Yeah.
There's a lot of accessibility that isn't included in options. It's included through design practices. So, can games be accessible without the need for options? I've never reviewed a game where they've included updates that aren't in the form of options.
Yeah.
However, I have reviewed games where sequels, or maybe if they're part of a trilogy, future games have included better design practices that remove some of those unintentional barriers without options in the menu.
Yeah. I mean, I've only been on sort of gaming Twitter for probably about a year. So I've not seen the full discourse. What I do know is that every time a FromSoft game comes out, this conversation comes up, and we will talk about that a bit later. But Psychonauts 2, when that came out, that had a multitude of various options. And again, one of them was easy mode. And I I want to get your opinion on that phrase, easy mode, because for me, Psychonauts 2 didn't have an easy mode. It had a mode that just meant that it wasn't a serious game. So I personally don't think that having an invincibility mode in Psychonauts 2 made the platforming easier. It just meant that you didn't get punished in the form of an arbitrary number lowering in the top left hand corner of your screen. So when it comes to easy mode, is there, it's going to sound like a silly pun now, is there an easy way to explain if an easy mode is good or bad, or is it very much a grey area?
Easy mode is a term that I wish would be removed from the vocabulary of everyone on Games Twitter. I think it's just a plague on accessibility. Um, Again, difficulty is subjective to whoever is playing the game. And because each game is so unique in its goals and objectives and challenges, there's no way to have an easy mode for every single game
Yeah,
that's uniform. So, like you gave the example of Psychonauts 2, um, that was great, but the platforming was still an issue.
yeah,
For a game like Tunic, which I reviewed for Fanbyte, not an accessibility review, just a review,
yeah.
they have a no death mode, but you still need to solve the puzzles. You still need to explore the world without like obvious maps and obvious hints.
And
It just,
with pathways hidden behind
yes,
random backwards
yeah,
sections of artwork.
yeah.
Yeah, I had that issue too.
There's no like. It just meant that if you have the invincibility mode, you just won't die to bosses.
Yeah,
That's it. But you still had to figure out other mechanics of the game. But for a game like um for the same Pokemon, how do you make that game easier with that option? Because you still have to fight trainers,
Yep.
you still have to explore the world, you still have to collect items. So an easy mode in Pokemon, for example, would not be the same as an easy mode in Tunic or Psychonauts.
Yeah. I don't know if you've played Final Fantasy VII on the Switch, but that has an option where after every turn, all of your characters regenerate all of their health, and if they're knocked down, they get back up. That completely ruined Final Fantasy VII for me because, like you say, games are designed to be challenging. They're designed to sort of challenge players and push them further. And so all I did when I replayed Final Fantasy VII on the Switch was I tried it. I put the invincibility on because the game is so slow because it's quite an old game. I turned the in-game speed up to 3, and I literally just sprinted everywhere. Like they would have been better off having an option to just turn off battles like that. That would have been the equivalent because each fight then became just how many times can I just get my limit break to beat this one random enemy. It absolutely ruined it for me. And Pokemon is a great example. How do you mitigate trainer fights or finding the fossils or catching all the Pokemon? Like you can't like it has a sort of inbuilt easy mode. So grass type in red was easier because the first two bosses were slightly easier, but that's not a difficulty slider. That's just a mechanic of the game hidden from most people. So yeah, how how do you make all games easy? It doesn't make sense.
I like the example you brought with Final Fantasy VII because it really shows the breadth of accessibility and different needs. Like for you, that mode was just boring.
Yeah,
For someone else, it could have been life saving, and that really goes to show how because it's an option that you can just flick on and off. You can use it if you want to. You can ignore it, what have you. That's ultimately a good way to make your game accessible. But
yeah,
again, easy mode is not a solution to every game if the game itself doesn't fall under the traditional criteria of difficulty, like
yeah,
a Pokemon game, for example. There is no difficulty. You can make the game as easy or as hard as you want to, based on who you use and
yeah,
who you decide to level and what Pokemon you use in specific situations. But for a game that has like a lot of platforming, maybe easy mode would be better because, like you said, for Psychonauts, if you keep dying, you just want to get past this part, but you don't want to lose any lives. That's a solution. So it really depends on what the game is, what its challenges are, what easy mode would do
yeah,
for that specific game. There's even games, Square Enix games, the Tomb Raider games, and then Guardians of the Galaxy, both made by the same studio. Vastly different easy modes
yeah.
because they have different goals and different objectives. So whenever people say, just add easy mode to all your games, it's not as simple as that.
What does that mean? So at the end of our end of the year last year, we had an award show, and my co-host Duncan, he nominated. Well, he chose Guardians of the Galaxy as his game of the year in terms of accessibility, just because of the broad spectrum and scope of all the various multiple options that they had. What were so over the past few years? What are some of the games that have really embraced accessibility that you've gone on to absolutely love?
Guardians, Forza,
Yeah,
um, Last of Us 2. However, I've never actually played Last of Us 2 because I can't use a PlayStation 4 controller.
right. Okay.
So that's an instance where you then get into like hardware accessibility. So which is a whole nother
Yeah.
awful area that we could spend 3 hours talking about.
Yeah.
Um, but that game deserves so much praise for all the work it did, all the options it did. But then you have games that don't have options that are still accessible, like Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, the remakes. For physically disabled players, as long as you can use a single finger and press like two buttons on a Joy-Con, like A and R, I think, you can fully play that game.
Yeah.
From start to finish, you can beat it, and you can be a champion. That
Just
has
with
no
two
options.
buttons and an analog
Yeah,
stick. Yeah.
hmm that has no options.
And that's, like you say, that's not an option where you go in and you click two button mode. That is
Right.
just a feature of how the game has been made by
Yes,
people who
exactly.
understand accessibility.
I wouldn't say they understand it. I just think it's just proof that you can make accessible games without needing layers of options
Yeah.
and without having a general understanding. Pokemon games, for example, are still not great for blind and low vision players. Because if you're completely sightless, there aren't really great ways to indicate like when your character runs into obstacles,
Yeah.
um, what moves you're going to be using. So they could improve, but for physical accessibility, it's amazing, and for deaf and hard of hearing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it's one of those instances where again, because it's so unique, accessibility, it's really hard to say like this game's amazing, this game isn't amazing, because ultimately it depends on what my needs are, what your needs are, and if the game can achieve those needs.
I mean, there are 7 billion people on Earth, and every single one of them is different. So there is no way that you can make a catch-all to grab everyone's attention and
Yeah,
to make everything suitable for everyone. That's never going to happen.
yeah, it's one of the things that is a very dark. I don't want to say dark, but like dark truth about accessibility is that you will never have a game that is fully accessible for every person, just because you can't account for every disability and how it impacts
Yeah.
each individual. You can do your best to try and get as many barriers removed as possible, but at the end of the day, there are going to be certain games that just can't be played.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean people shouldn't try, and that doesn't mean that people should say, "Oh, this game just isn't meant for you." They should
I
be,
was gonna come on to
yeah,
that.
they
Yeah.
should try their hardest and work with people to see how they can make it work, but
Yeah.
it's just the reality of being disabled is,
So one of the things for me, and I'm not registered as disabled, but I do have quite bad eyesight. One of the things for me is if I don't see a text size slider in a game, it's almost unplayable sometimes. There have been games just in the past few weeks, and as much as I love, so Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has just come out, and I absolutely love that game. I think it's fantastic fun, really enjoy it, but I can't play it on my TV in my living room. I have to play it on my gaming monitor when I'm sat up close to it because there is no option for me to expand the text on the screen. I can change the subtitles, that's fine, but there's so many small items and objects and texts, and it's quite a heavy screen with no option to expand those. And that's just from a very sort of small point of view where I just have quite bad eyesight. I can't get into the footsteps of someone who is registered blind, who does have complete sight loss. So I've never come up against an accessibility option that's ever put me off of a game, but there's certainly been games that haven't had sort of accessibility options that have meant for me I can't personally enjoy it, and that's from someone who just I just have sort of bad eyes. Like it's nothing even more serious than that.
you bring up an interesting point. The vast majority of accessibility options, like subtitles, are used by able-bodied people.
Yeah.
Like, certain control scheme options could be used by a parent holding a newborn. And
Yeah.
let's say you can't move your arm because you don't want to make up your baby, so you have to like change your controls. Or let's say you have someone who's sleeping, you turn on subtitles
It's a
and you
really
turn
good
up the
point. Yeah.
volume. A lot of options people assume are just made for disabled people, and they're not. So
Yeah.
many people are finding themselves using these options without being disabled because the situation presents itself where they need them.
Yeah, I mean, I strictly watch television with subtitles on, and I've just been like that for like 10 years now. In my mind, it doesn't even equate to accessibility. It's just pure convenience that if my kid's asleep or if I don't want to wake anyone up, like I can just read the words on the screen. It doesn't even enter my mind that that is accessibility. I wanted to go back to something you said a second ago, where you said it's not meant for you. And I think we need to talk about Elden Ring. Um, Now, as far as I can tell, you love Elden Ring. And from everything you've said, you love Elden Ring. And I, you know, I somewhat enjoyed it. I put 30 hours into it and I thought it was okay. It's not my cup of tea. Soulsborne games just never really have been. But I put 30 hours in. I enjoyed what I played, but I just got to a point where my skill was I just wasn't good enough. The phrase "get good" just didn't work on me. So I want to talk about Elden Ring with you in terms of its accessibility. It does a lot wrong. I'm sure it does some stuff right. Um, what are your sort of? It's hard to say without us going on a 2 hour review of Elden Ring. What is there that you enjoy about Elden Ring and the Soulsborne games, purely from just a gameplay perspective, without looking at accessibility?
The Soulsborne games are great at giving players choice.
Yeah,
Not so much the path that they take, although Elden Ring did change that tremendously. But more so in the way players play. So if I want to be like a big tanky shield boy with a big sword and just swing till it dies, I can do that. If I want to be a magic caster who sits in the back
yeah,
and my friends are the ones who aggro the boss or enemies, I can do that. If I want to be a support character who heals and just buffs my friends or myself, I can do that. And they do it in a way that's almost seamless, because usually in every Souls game, there's a way to change how you build your character. So if something doesn't work, you can just, yeah, I'll do this anymore, and you can just change it.
yeah,
I've yet to play a Souls game that restricts you to using the type of character you built for the entire game. I know for me, for Elden Ring, I am playing as a mage
yeah.
who primarily does magic in the back. But I've also been building into strength, so now I'm a mage with a giant sword. So if my magic fails, then I can just run up
Swing a
and
big sword.
swing. Yeah. Um, that's part of the inclusive design aspect that games tend to look to, is the more choice players have, the more accessible it can become.
Yeah, and Souls games give you that. Now, it does some things. It does some things wrong.
It does a lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
It's a very awful game. I would not, I don't care, people are gonna hate me for it. I mean, they shouldn't, because I love the game. It's probably my game of the year, but Soulsborne games are not masterclass in game design. They
Oh,
do
that's
so
quite the
much wrong.
contentious opinion that you've got there.
Yeah, they do so much wrong,
Yeah,
and they're not games that should be emulated. It's a very niche type of game
Yeah,
that is a very specific fan. And going back to what you said, if a game isn't meant for you, that's different versus if it's not playable to you.
yeah,
And that's where Souls games struggle. Is a lot of the issues they have is its accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing, blind and low vision, people with cognitive disabilities, even some people with physical disabilities
yeah,
really struggle to play. And there are so many things they could do to ease those barriers,
yeah,
and they just don't. But I shouldn't say don't, because if you look from Dark Souls 3 to Elden Ring, I think that was a 6 year period. There has been massive improvements in the overall game design that truly opened it up more to disabled players.
yeah,
But there's still a lot more that can be done.
yeah. So I know that one of the main issues for me was the lack of NPC tracking when the game first came out. Now, someone brought up quite a good point on Twitter is that people don't really classify things like, say, ADHD as a disability. However, somebody who has an attention deficit disorder, they may struggle just with simple things of remembering where an NPC is. I had issues with that. And then on top of that, there is no colorblind option. Um, there is always the conversation about is magic in easy mode, which it can't be because it's in the game. So, you
Yeah.
know,
And they did a patch as of today's recording that they just buffed every spell
yeah.
in the game. So like
So the
if
argument,
Miyazaki, yeah, if
yeah,
Miyazaki is saying that, yeah, we're gonna buff every magic spell in the game, then
yep,
you don't really have ground to stand on to be like magic just shouldn't be in the game, because the literal creator of the game just decided to buff every spell,
all of the magic spells
all of them.
immediately. I think I sent you a tweet the other day. It was from my personal one. It's the picture of the boss that you played for 45 times, where it's like you didn't defeat her, you use this and you use that, and you had your TV turned
It
on
was
and
an
you lose
amazing,
electricity.
amazing image.
And
I
that
loved it.
is that is I'm not going to say it's all the Soulsborne fans because it's a very small minority, but they're very vocal,
Yes.
where they tell you that you're not playing the game correctly. It's one of the issues that I had in Elden Ring is I've never really got into a Souls game before, so I really didn't know what I was doing. And so one of the struggles for me was I genuinely didn't know what to do. And that wasn't that I wasn't playing it properly. It gave me no indication on where to go. It gave me
Hmm.
no sort of I know that it's a very minimalist game, but there were no sort of actual so I followed the arrows and I got to Fell Omen within 2 hours and I got annihilated for 2 hours because I thought that's where I had to go. Um, and apparently I shouldn't have done that and I should have gone right at a certain place. And I just, there's a lot in the game that,
Yeah.
that doesn't help people.
I
And
think, like, in previous Souls games, because they were so linear, that design aspect was okay, because ultimately there's like one path that takes you exactly where
yeah,
you need to go. There may be some divergent branches, but they all lead to the same area. With Elden Ring, you can't just. Well, I mean, you can. People beat it, but it's not healthy to just drop someone
yeah,
in who's never done a game like this before and just give you, like, you're maidenless, go touch Grace.
yep.
I don't know what that means.
That was me.
But,
That was exactly
yeah.
me. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know. I saw I saw one of the keys in the first area, opened that place up, got smashed to pieces by a flaming chariot for an hour because I'm not looking for a game to hold my hand. Oh, that phrase. makes me shudder. I'm not
Ooh,
looking for a game to hold my hand, but I'm also not looking for a game to punish my sort of my lack of understanding. And I do feel that the combat was great in Elden Ring, absolutely loved it. But what I did feel was that there were often times where it just felt unfair, and it did feel like it was punishing me slightly for not understanding every mechanic of the game immediately.
yes.
That that was my
Like
main issue.
there's a boss literally at the very beginning. Is that giant golden knight who's
The
on a
Tree Sentinel.
horse? Yes, I can't think of his name. Um, if you're a Souls veteran, you know by looking at him and maybe fighting him, he hurts too much. I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah,
And that's sort of Elden Ring's way of showing you the world is yours. If you're having trouble, find something else. But for people who aren't used to that, who don't know the design practices of Souls games, you're gonna sit there and be like, am I supposed to be doing this?
that's the first
Is
boss.
this bad? Yeah. Am I this bad already? I don't get it. And Elden Ring does suffer from being too openly vague
Yeah,
for too many people.
that was
There,
my main issue. It was a very vague game. Now, my co-host Duncan has just completed Elden Ring, and right up until the end game, it was his game of the year. Right up until that point, but he got to the end game and he suffered through it because that his exact words to me was the design in the end game is lazy because it is almost as if they just crank the difficulty up to 11 and say there's 3 more of those bosses. He said if he has to face one more Crucible night, he will throw his Xbox out the window, um, because as accessible as the early game might be in terms of the open world, and you can go anywhere you want to, and you can explore dungeons, and the open world, don't get me wrong, it's incredible. His point of view was all of that sort of feels a bit wasted if the end game is just difficult for the sake of it. And I know that he got stuck on the same boss as you.
we're talking about Melania.
Mm.
Oh, that wonderful woman. Melania is one of those things that she is optional, totally optional. You don't need to kill her. You can literally never even find her domain. You could skip past it
Yeah.
through multiple playthroughs and never have any idea where it is. But it's one of those bosses that it's just, to me, unnecessarily ridiculous with what she can do.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are gonna be like, "You suck." I beat her. She's dead. I have the ring to prove it. I
I
like.
can't say that. I can't say that I beat her. I got
Yeah,
stuck at Hogwarts, so I'm really not very good at
yeah.
this game.
Hogwarts was also awful, and
Yeah.
I was a mage, and it was awful. Um, but there are certain areas where that you could have avoided her, but then the game does a really good job of like making you feel awful
Yeah.
for avoiding certain areas because the community around it is like, oh, have you fought this boss? Have you done this? Have you done this? And it's like, I want to do that, but I can't because it's awful.
Yeah.
Um,
I need a naked guy with a bucket on his head to help me.
yeah, yeah. I died on Melania probably upwards of 50 times,
Wow.
and after I beat her, it wasn't the sense of, oh my gosh, I did it, she's dead, jubilation, screaming with joy and everything. It was like, I can finally play the rest of the game.
Yeah.
I don't need to come back
Finally.
here.
Yeah. To a lesser extent, I felt the same way with the Crucible Knight in Limgrave. Um, I was determined to beat that guy. I think I died to him somewhere close to 40 times. And
He is very tough.
I know that I wasn't the right build, and I know I wasn't using the right weapons, and I know that I wasn't a high enough level, but it was there was something about it that I would feel bad if I didn't. And then, like you said, I beat the Crucible Knight and it dropped 1,200 runes, and I felt absolutely so unenthusiastic to play
Yeah,
that game.
yeah. I beat Melania, screenshot it, put it on my Twitter, told her to eat shit, as she deserves. And then I just got off, and I was like, I don't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
I just have zero desire to play it.
Yeah, Duncan said that by the end of it, he had to beat the game so that he didn't have to play it anymore.
It's exactly how I feel. I am at another optional area because I'm doing co-op with my friend. Two
Yeah,
of us are doing the entire game together, and so we're at another like Melania-esque area. If you know about it, you know about it. If not,
yeah,
I don't want to spoil it. Um, but as I was talking to him last night, I was like, do we really need to do this?
yeah,
Can't we just like finish the game?
yeah. Just get to the end already.
I
Like,
just like we're right there. Can't we just skip it and move on? Like it's not important.
but
And
yet
that's
here's the
something Elden
thing:
Ring.
you're
That's
there
something.
saying it's your game of the year potentially.
It is my game of the year.
Yeah,
It still is. I would very much hope that it wins all the awards. Well, I shouldn't say all of them because it's not perfect, but
yeah,
I do hope it wins awards. I do hope it gets recognized for being a great game.
yeah,
I also want people to understand that its design practices and accessibility offerings are some of the worst I've seen in modern games within the past 5 years.
yeah,
It's a game that's been using the same methodology and design practices since Demon Souls, and that was 2009, 2008.
yeah.
It doesn't carry over well,
I mean,
especially for an open world game. It's just not good.
one of my biggest issues, I don't know how multiplayer works. Got to put a finger on the floor, and then you've got to wait for a banner on the, and then you.
That's something that I wish like people who ridicule it, oh, you just don't know how to play a game. You suck. Because the game doesn't tell you.
There's
Like I have these. I
no idea how
remember
to do that.
exactly. I remember when I first started. I was like with my friend, like, all right, how do we summon each other? And we spent like an hour trying to figure out like this flower, and you
Yeah,
have to craft into this item, and you have to pop it, and you have to write down something. And it's like this isn't. How would we figure this out?
that's not fun.
It's not fun. Like
Or you could just have an option to have a multiplayer lobby and
yeah,
you join it and you go into the game.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like there are ways to retain the challenge without being too ridiculous
yeah,
versus just simplifying certain mechanics that are honestly outdated and do not serve an open world space
no.
in a conducive way to players.
I
If
made
you're
a
a
comment.
salesman,
Oh, sorry, I was going to say I made a comment that it felt like the UI was fighting against me quite a lot because nothing ever felt like it was really explained to me. I'm looking at an object in my menu and I have less of an idea of what it does. So the key one for me was I equipped an item that said it would negate fall damage. So I jumped off of something very tall and I died. So it didn't negate fall damage, but apparently what it does is it negates fall damage if you were to survive the fall. And the way to check that is you throw a rainbow stone off of the thing you're on, and if it smashes, you'll die. But if it doesn't smash, it means you can jump off the thing. And then if you equip the token, well, I can't remember what it was called, it means that you then will survive the fall and not take the damage. Like, that's just unnecessary, right?
yeah, that's now Souls vets the toxic ones would be like, you just don't understand. And it's like, you're right, I don't,
I
because
don't.
no
Yeah,
one told me this. Like,
I
how do
don't.
I get this?
And I think something that a lot of people forget is that you can enjoy something and also criticize it. So
Exactly.
if the world worked where you couldn't criticize things that you liked, then nothing would ever get done. You can
Yeah.
absolutely love something and still see that there's a problem with it. So I'm playing a game called Ollie Ollie World at the moment. It's probably my game of the year.
The game's amazing.
Absolutely love that game. I've got one issue with it, and it's that the the tricks done with the left stick, I would prefer if I could do it with the right stick, and I would like an option to switch the flip tricks and the grab tricks because I'm used to playing like Skate 3, where the right analog stick is the flip tricks. I'd like an option to change those things. Ollie Ollie World is my game of the year. I still think there's some problems with it. Elden Ring is your game of the year, and it's fine to say that there's some problems with it. I think that
And there
people
are numerous.
need to understand that is that you can love something and also criticize it.
Yeah. Like, one of my biggest complaints of Elden Ring is the PvP aspect. Um, and PvP is activated when you do co-op.
Yep,
And with Elden Ring, the game actively encourages you to play with friends or to play with like spirit summons
yep,
because it's so massive. It actively encourages the player to bring in outside help. And whenever you're constantly being invaded for doing the thing that the game tells you to do
yeah,
and encourages you to do, that's not really good game design.
no,
Like, especially if invaders, their sole purpose, most of them, there are some friendly invaders, and I've encountered some with my friend, but most of them will just ruin your day and then make you restart. And no
yep.
one's enjoying that except the invader. That's not like making the game more challenging for the sake of difficulty. It's just,
It's adding an obstacle.
it's adding an unnecessary obstacle.
Yeah,
There's no
100%.
reason for it.
Well, I think that was a very productive chat about Elden Ring. It's the most productive chat that I've had about Elden Ring for a long time. Um, I wish that I could enjoy the game more. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not a good game. It very obviously is. It's a it's a perfect game. I think one of the things that I said probably about a week into my experience with it is that the people that reviewed the game, and it's on, I think it's sitting on a 96 at the moment on Metacritic.
I believe so, yeah. It's
I
year 95, 96.
95, 96. I would say that of the however many hundred people that reviewed it critically, most of them were Souls fans, so they knew what they were going into. I wonder what the score would be if it wasn't done by the Office's Souls guy, because
Exactly.
I don't think it would be getting the same review. We live in a
It's,
world where people think 7 out of 10 is bad. I gave Elden Ring a 7 because, in my mind, it wasn't perfect. 5 is average. 5 is a game that I think, it's okay. 2 is a game that is just unplayable. A 7 for me means that it has a few issues. It isn't personally something that I love, but I can see that it's good. But we live in a world where people see 7s and 8s and they think it's a trash game. And I would wonder what the score would be if it wasn't the Office Souls guy that played Elden Ring and reviewed it, because most of the reviews were like, it's Dark Souls 3 with a horse that can jump. 10 out of 10.
it's the same example they do, like with Pokemon. A lot of Pokemon fans, but the games are too easy. They're not. We just know how to play them.
Yeah,
If I gave someone who's never played Pokemon the game, like, here's what you do, go into it, it would be tough.
yeah,
They would struggle. But the game would teach them what to do.
because Sword and
Unlike
Shield
Elden
were
Ring.
panned. Sword and Shield, when they came out, they were panned for being too easy.
Yeah,
But
they're not.
we spent 20 years playing Pokemon. We know how to play them. So
Yeah, like, I know how to build a team. I know
yeah,
what moves to use. I know, like, how to, trick my
effectiveness.
opponent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know all that. So the game, I'm gonna win it with first try without any difficulty. But that's because I know everything.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't. play sports games. I just don't like them. They're not my thing. If you were to have me review a sports game, I probably would critique it very, not harshly, but like, I don't get this. I don't like
Yeah,
this. This isn't. Yeah,
exactly. So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I could literally, I think I could literally talk to you all day about Elden Ring, and I don't even really like the game that much. And I could also talk to you all day about Pokemon, but we are rounding up to the hour. Um, what we're going to close off on is what the future holds for yourself, Grant. I'm sure everyone watching this will check out your work, will follow you hopefully on Twitter to see the sort of stuff that you're into, and the work that you've put out there. What have you got planned, and what would you like to see in the next few years within the video game space?
My goal as a journalist is to elevate disabled voices to the point where coverage of disabled perspective and accessibility shortcomings and offerings are normalized.
Yeah,
I want the industry to treat these topics that they treat everything else. I'm hoping in a few years, and I understand these take time. This is not something that will occur overnight, and people need to understand that it may take years before the industry is at this point. But my goal is to eventually see disabled journalists across varying outlets, disabled podcast hosts, disabled streamers being included amongst able bodied people, as they
yeah,
should be,
yeah, one hundred
because
percent.
accessibility is only increasing, its understanding is only further developing. And if you're gonna have conversations about accessibility without disabled voices, you're not really pushing the narrative. It doesn't serve anyone at that point.
Yeah,
So my goal is to bring that kind of coverage to mainstream audiences.
and good luck with it. Honestly,
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have had you on here. It's been, this is something quite new for me. I've never done a one-on-one interview before with someone, and so as soon as you said, it was very short notice. It's within 24 hours notice. You were like, "Yes, let's do this. Let's go for it." And I hope that we can have conversations like this in the future, where you say, "Here is the proof that my work has come through." Um, Accessibility in gaming is something that everybody should want to strive for. And voices like yourself are more and more important. And not only that, they're getting louder. 5 years ago, these conversations wouldn't be happening. And I am so excited for 5 years' time to see exactly as you said, where it is just normal practice to have voices of disabled people talking about their experiences. The more that happens, the better shape the games industry will be in. So, Grant, honestly, thank you so much for coming on today. Like I said at the start of the show, how can people find you?
Well, you can read my work across the industry. If it's a story about accessibility, it's probably from me. If not, good. I want there to be others. Um, but if you want to follow me specifically, you can find me on Twitter at super underscore crip 1994. And you can follow my journalism work and my takes about Pokemon.
There we go. Yeah, so for any hot Pokemon takes, including Gen 3 is overrated, follow
Because it
Grant.
is.
It absolutely is. And that's where we'll end it today. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Please do share this video, like this video, subscribe to us if you want to. It does make a huge difference. I've got to do my marketing spiel. I hate doing this. It's just the worst. I always
You
feel
gotta
bad.
do it.
You got to do it.
Everyone has to.
Smash that like button. But honestly, if you enjoyed this sort of content from me, it's something that I'm hoping to do more of. So please leave your messages below. If you've got any questions for Grant as well, comment on this video or tweet him directly, because we need to push accessibility, and Grant is one of the very best people on this subject. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.